MAGA's a cult. They're a lost cause. I've heard it. I'm not believing it because even people are able to break out of cults. Okay, so in this era, when we absolutely need to peel off as many voters as possible and create a coalition of the willing, we need to be able to believe that we can actually reach these folks. And so that's what tonight is. I want you to stay with me on this one. Stay with me on this journey. I am Maya May, and maybe I have a codependent relationship with America, and I'm like, we're gonna save it. We're gonna save all of us. Come along for the ride because united we stand, divided we fall. And so that's why I'm super excited about tonight's show because we have on the founder of Leaving MAGA. He was in MAGA for 7 years, and then he got out, and now he goes back in and he plucks people out. It's like I'm not going to liken him to Harriet Tubman. We're not going to do that on my show, but this is important work that he's doing. He's freeing people from MAGA. So, without further ado, before I say anything else too crazy, Rich Logis, Leaving MAGA, welcome to Punching Up.
Maya, thank you so much. That intro, I have to say, preach,
I mean,
preach.
I'm so sick of hearing people say that it's a cult and they're a lost cause. Like that feels so counterproductive to me. Can you talk about your time in MAGA? How you ended up there first? I want to hear that story.
Sure. And regarding Harriet Tubman, at one time, I'm sure in our history, abolitionists looked at those who supported slavery and said they're lost causes, but abolitionists needed to bring pro slavery Americans over to their side to abolish. So
That's a good point.
I, I don't in any way compare what we're doing to abolitionists, and I know that's not what you meant either. But to your point about looking to extract people out, we are living proof, myself, all of those who have given testimonials at Leaving MAGA, that it is possible to change your mind, admit a mistake, and walk away. And for me, my sensibilities really developed in college. I voted third party many, many times. My first vote for president was Ralph Nader when I was
Mhm.
23 years old. And I was a very politically cynical and pessimistic person in 2015. So when Trump came on the scene, even though he ran as a Republican, he came in as this outsider without government, military experience. And I thought, okay, this person who doesn't come from politics, this is exactly the kind of person we need for this position because he seemed willing and able to do what I thought was necessary, which was obliterate the established political order and start anew.
Well, that he
Now,
did.
now and we are watching that obliteration. And even though I have been out of the MAGA community for almost 3 years now, what we're seeing is what it looks like taking a flamethrower to our federal apparatus, and it is harming all kinds of Americans. It is not just harming one or two demographics, it is harming numerous of our citizens. But I thought that's what we needed, Maya, and I was wrong about that.
And thank you for admitting that you're wrong because that's the first step, right? Is perhaps reflecting and admitting that someone is wrong and then and moving on from there. So, in your time in MAGA, did you find that people love MAGA? Do they love Trump? Do they love America? What is it that is bonding people together?
I think the relationship between pro and anti MAGA people, on one hand, might be complicated, but on the other hand, I believe that most people in MAGA deep down are good people. Yes, like any large group, there are some people who are bad people, but those in MAGA, they share a lot of the same concerns and fears and hopes and aspirations that those not in MAGA do. We want safety and security. We want good education for our kids. We want economic opportunity and mobility. And so people in MAGA, I do believe that they love our country. I believe in the goodness in them. What MAGA also has, though, Maya, is a shared enemy. And even though I didn't exactly think of it this way, and I know that most in MAGA right now probably don't think of it this way either, the enemy of MAGA is liberalism and liberal democracy. Because many in MAGA feel like democracy has failed them. And while it is a belief that I may not agree with, I think that I I understand the sentiment that some can have, feeling like government has let them down and that government only is looking to represent a small sliver of our electorate, the wealthy and the powerful. Trump really gave voice to that kind of populism. Unfortunately, he is one of the elites that populist leaders are always trying to pit against everyday working people. And so I think that people in MAGA, they do care about our country. And while I don't defend their anyone else's ignorance, I do also believe that they've been exploited, manipulated, and led astray. I allowed myself to be influenced and subsumed into the right wing MAGA world. So I must take accountability for that. But all of us are susceptible to being inculcated into a certain way of thinking. And that's the effectiveness of what MAGA friendly media has done with tens and tens of millions of people in that MAGA community.
So when MAGA folks get together, like take us behind the veil, I suppose. What are the conversations about? Is it about how much they love America and they can't wait until the immigrants are gone and the women are in line? Like, I want to build an understanding for people who never get to see that side. What are the conversations like? Or maybe they don't even talk about politics. What do they talk about?
There is a militancy to being in MAGA because there's an all or none philosophy. When I was in MAGA, and I suspect it's the case right now, anyone, Maya, who was not with us was against us. If you were 99% with us, you were 0% with us.
Mm.
And we applied that standard not just to Democrats or liberals or progressives. If someone was a Republican or conservative who was against us, we treated them all the same. And we also kept out of our community any information that might even remotely refute any of the pervasively held mythologies and beliefs. And so while I don't think MAGA is solely I don't think MAGA is solely an information siloed group compared to others. I do believe that there's no more of an info siloed group in the country than those in the MAGA community. So those conversations we had were very much about existential threats that we saw to ourselves and our nation and our families and our livelihoods. And so we talked a lot about conquer or be conquered. And I think that that tone and tenor is still very much present within MAGA right now.
So that sounds very much like a cult. And yet you were able to get out, and people get out of cults all the time. So what led you to going, this isn't going to work for me?
I do acknowledge that there were some aspects that were cult-like for me. MAGA consumed my identity, my being, my personhood. I had a second family, and sometimes that second family in MAGA took precedence over my own blood family. I'm embarrassed to admit that, but it is the truth, and I feel I must be transparent when I tell my story. The reason I caution against the framing of cult is because when we used to hear that, we used to dig our heels in even deeper.
Mhm.
And and if someone is referred to as who is in MAGA as a cultist, it makes it less likely for them to eventually listen to some of their doubts and possibly even leave behind that world. When we were in MAGA, we used to hear that and we would say, no, we're not the crazy ones. It's the outside world who are the crazies, or we're not the cult. It's the outside world who's the cult. And part of our mission statement at Leaving MAGA is to empower people to leave and tell their stories. And so I would just implore everyone and really ask people to be cautious about that framing, because we don't want to strengthen the already strong bond between Trump and supporters. We want to give them an exit ramp, a destination, and a new community, because that's what I call MAGA. It is a community, but I want people to have a place to go, and that's what we found in Leaving MAGA as is a new community for people who decide to leave.
So when you did leave, did you lose that second family? Or were there any people that saw you leave and go, maybe I'll follow him along? Like, how was that for you? And how did you develop, I guess, the strength and fortitude to walk away from what was your second family?
You know, it took me an entire year to make the decision to leave, and I vacillated a lot between do I support this? Yes, I do. I don't think I can support this. No, I must. And part of that one of the reasons it was so hard was because of that community that I had people I broke bread with, with whom I congregated. We went to holiday parties, birthday parties. We knew each other's families. We saw each other just like any other group of friends or family might. And it was also another reason so difficult to leave is that I had to come to this liberating but painful conclusion that so much Maya of what I had believed was false. And it wasn't just one or two beliefs, it was years and years worth of accumulated beliefs. And one of the ways that I discovered that I was wrong about this is that I diversified my news and information sources. And I started doing that when I had doubts in the summer of 2021. Between COVID mismanagement, between the election lies, between January 6th, between my governor, Ron DeSantis, platforming anti-vaxxers at his pressers, and then for me, the final straw, which sadly, as a somber anniversary, we just that just passed was May 24th, 2022, Uvalde.
Mm.
It was after Uvalde that I quietly left MAGA, and I could not support any longer justifying and defending unnecessary deaths and suffering, and also defending politically motivated violence. But there was something that was gnawing at me after Uvalde. Even though I may have quietly left, I was always so unapologetically public in my support for Trump. I felt that I needed to be public in my renunciation of my support. And it was on August 30th, 2022, I wrote a mea culpa in which I acknowledged my errors, and I wanted to say that I was sorry to anyone I may have hurt with my words and my deeds. And so I have a Leaving MAGAversary, which is August 30th, 2022. And I have to say, the God's honest truth, Maya, is I never believed that anybody would care when I
Mm.
decided to go public. And I've been humbled by the fact that so many want to hear this story and hear about the work that we're doing. So I really appreciate that you would have me on to hear about a little bit about my odyssey and the work that we're doing. It means a lot to us. Thank you.
Well, it means a lot to me that you're doing this work because you give people hope. That's what I think a lot of people who've lost friends and family members, parents, sisters, brothers to MAGA and fear they'll never get them back. I have people DM me all the time, and I'm like, you can reach them. You'll eventually be able to reach them. We can't give up on people in the same way that we can't give up on our country. And so this is why it is so important to me. So you left, you decide that you want to help people, and you have this mea culpa, which I love because it's almost like a 12-step program in the ownership and accountability piece of things. And you have 5 steps that you use to talk to people about MAGA and
We
why they
do.
should leave. Can you talk about those 5 steps? Everybody get your pens out. Pause, grab a grab. I should have told you to get your pens out in the beginning.
Well, good news is for any of you out there without a pen and something to write on, you can find it's called Reaching Out, and it's a guide that we wrote. It's at our site, leavingmaga.org. There's also an ebook that I wrote, which talks a little bit about my biography and goes into really, really intricate detail about what attracted me to MAGA, why I gravitated to it, my time in MAGA, and then why I decided to leave. And so the points are really a variety that's run and span the gamut of finding do's and don'ts, trying to find relatability. And all of us can find common ground if we are willing to have a long enough conversation. It's like that point I mentioned earlier about sharing hopes, dreams, concerns, fears, and aspirations.
Mhm.
We need to not see each other as enemies the way that I used to look at everyone who was not with us in MAGA. There's also some don'ts about what not to do. And the fact is, our Homo sapien species does not make decisions on facts, and in politics, we don't make them on policy. We make them on feelings and perceptions. And we need to find emotional ways to resonate with each other in such a way where it's not just a one way conversation, that is rooted in facts and expertise. Look, I value expertise, but expertise doesn't move the needle on these conversations. And as part of the guide that we did, again, which is called Reaching Out, we also include some questions for people
Mm.
to incorporate. For example, one is, if I'm speaking with someone who, let's say, is in the MAGA community, I might say to them, even if we disagree, I do understand some of the reasons why you support the president and why you support this movement. Do you understand why, however, some may not support the president and why some are opposed to this movement? And if that's asked in a gentle, respectful way, I guarantee that the person who's being asked that has never heard that before. And it
I
gets
love
people, and
Yes.
it gets people thinking about
Mhm.
not only their own life at the moment, but it also gets them thinking about something else, which is what I call, where did you hear that?
Mm.
And where did you hear that? The idea of that is, and that's included in the guide as well. The idea of where did you hear that is to find the source origin of the information we consume. Because
How do
all of us are vulnerable to mis and disinformation.
Absolutely. How do we do this without, because even as you're talking about these steps, like I feel my pulse start to rise. And I'm like, it is very challenging, especially when it's someone that we care about, let alone thinking about a stranger online. Because I know people get their hearts racing arguing with people in, comments online, but also with a family member. How how does one channel the zen that might be necessary to not want to attack, to not want to talk about policy? If
Mhm.
we have to be able to control our own emotions, right? So how do you do that? How does that play out?
You said it very well a moment ago, which was to not give up on people. And I know that it's a very big ask to request of those who have friends and family still in the thrall of MAGA to initiate those conversations. And a lot of times online, I'll get these comments such as, "Rich, why do I need to do that? I'm not the Trump supporter. I saw through him in 2016. It should be my brother or my son or my friend who initiates this conversation." I understand those sentiments very, very well, but if we're going to rejuvenate these relationships, we need our allies to do that, and our allies are the friends and family. And if they follow the guide that we put together, we haven't put something together that's just theoretical or abstract. We've actually deployed it in real life situations. And so the stratagems are not just ones that we hope will work. Yes, there's a hopefulness to it, but it's actually worked in real life. And I think that if there's the defense, if we structured it in such a way where if we lower the defenses, we can actually have civil conversations that humanize each other and see the worth and dignity and integrity of one another. I was at an event recently. Lady comes to me. It was not a Trump friendly event. And she says to me, "My husband is here. He's a Trump voter. He agreed to come with me." And I said, "Great, I want to meet him." And later on, he came in, he saw my booth. It said Leaving MAGA. So I said, "You probably know what my politics are." But I told him, I said, "I want you to know, I don't think you're a racist or a homophobe or a misogynist." He got a little chuckle. He said to me, "I don't think you're a socialist or a communist." And I said, "Great." So we've,
It's a good
so
jumping
we
off point.
right, we've concluded what we aren't. We're two guys, we're two human beings, and we're two Americans. And we had a conversation about our time growing up in New York. And if we had been able to extend that conversation, we would have found that there's probably a lot more than either of us realize that we might agree on. We have to get to sources of agreement because that's how we really dismantle the bulwarks and the stanchions that keep us from talking to each other.
And I love that you use humor as an opening because, again, that's a way to bring those defenses down. I highly encourage people to learn how to laugh their way through all of this because otherwise we're just going to be at each other's throats. Um, do you feel like now there is more of an opening now? It just feels like the cognitive distance of what's happening with Medicaid and Medicare and just the out and out corruption, it's getting harder and harder to excuse, no?
I'm Our organization is wagering a bet that there are many who have quietly left and that there are some who are really reconsidering and questioning their belief and their support. We see published reports about people who lose resources, they lose jobs, and they were Trump voters. It's very easy to say, I told you so. But the problem is, it's like the cult language. All it does is it makes them dig their heels in deeper. We need to give them the space to have those doubts and ask them gently those questions about, is this what it is? This in fact what you think it was that you were voting for? And for a lot of people, they're going to realize, they're going to say, no, it wasn't what I thought I was voting for. And again, I know it's easy to say, well, you only care about it because it affects you. Maya, let's be honest about it. That's human nature, right? It's that,
Exactly.
we don't tend to pay attention to something until it adversely affects us. If someone is having doubts, let's welcome them. Let's not judge. Let's not ostracize them. I think right now I think that there is a burgeoning opening, and I think that opening is going to get wider and wider in the coming months. I just want everyone out there who wanna they want to see their friends and family eventually leave MAGA. Join us in our mission to not shame. Join us in our mission to create that exit ramp, and shameless plug, let them know about leaving MAGA. Show them our testimonials, that the living proof that people can leave. I am living proof that people didn't give up on me, my friends and others who were close to me. They didn't see me as a lost cause. They knew that in fact, one even said to me when I apologized to him after I left MAGA, he said, Rich, apology accepted. I always knew that you'd come back.
I love
So that
that.
so that is absolutely possible for those of you out there who have friends and family. And if we just stay consistent, we're going to see more and more leave. I really truly believe that.
I believe it too. And I think it's so important. It's so easy to want to shame people. Like, I get it. And empathy does actually take work. There's studies on the fact that to be empathetic, it's cognitively taxing to try to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And so it isn't natural for us to necessarily do that unless society places rewards we're rewarded for being empathetic. And I think that's probably a little bit of what's going on in our society right now, that empathy is so all of a sudden a bad thing. And so I truly encourage people to not shame, and I try to not do it myself. So we're in this opening, people are leaving. What can, because we still have this media silo, we still have the Fox News of the world and all the different channels. What would you ask of, like, the major networks if they could do even just the slightest thing differently? Because it feels like they're not even talking about it at all. They're not interviewing people, and I'd like to see something done differently. You too?
Yeah, I think that it would benefit the country if our press took more of an interest in the openings that we're seeing. And in fairness, there are published reports that are out there where we see Trump voters who maybe have some regret, some remorse. But and again, I don't say this in a self-aggrandizing way. I wish that the testimonials of our site, where people can read them in our organization, I wish that more Americans knew about them. And
Mhm.
when I would ask the press to consider, doesn't have to showcase Rich. I want those who have told their stories with us to be showcased. We
Mhm.
have those who are Christian nationalists, charismatic evangelical churches. We've got a lady named Stefania. We've got another gentleman, Jason Riddle. He was actually at January 6th, and he rejected his pardon for his actions on
Mm.
January 6th. We have a black man named James who had so ingratiated himself into MAGA as a black man that he actually wore a Confederate flag wristband. And there are others, and these are all individuals who, through their intrepidity and their will, said no. I don't support this anymore. It doesn't reflect who I am. It doesn't represent my values. I want more and more across the country to know about these stories. And
Mhm.
that's why you've given us a chance to be with you, and introduce this to your audience. I'm so grateful for it, because I would ask everyone that the moment that they are at their computer, read the stories at our site, and you'll find optimism there. You'll find hopefulness. You're not going to find the cynicism and pessimism that was present in me when Trump decided to run. And I have agency, all of us do. Unfortunately, I think that I was somewhat ready made by my own doing when
Mm,
Trump came. And
mm.
when he came on the scene, I was not all in immediately, but by the end of 2015, early 16, I was a volunteer. I did grassroots work. I even wrote part of the call script for the Trump campaign. So I was very much a true believer. All of those whose testimonials we feature, they were all true believers as well until they weren't.
Well, and I think it is important to amplify these stories because the whole reason they don't want us to hear it is they don't want us to know that we can come together. They want us at each other's throats so that we can continue to create the clicks that they need and the anger and the rage and this idea that somehow we can actually heal. Like that's the story that I want to hear. I want people to come together, and so I'm all for amplifying that. And I'd love to have anyone that you send my way who can tell me this story and how they came to this realization and how it made them feel good to be able to reconnect with their friends and family again. Like I'm wondering if sometimes the conversation just starts with, "I miss you. I miss hanging out with you." And maybe the conversation goes from there. We should have a role playing. I need you to teach like a role playing course for everybody.
Well, we're working on one that's somewhat similar with "Where Did You Hear That?"
Okay.
And that would be, we want to get to the sort. We want to combat political mythologies that are false, as well as mis and disinformation. I would argue that mis and disinformation was the primary culprit for why Kamala lost in November. And full disclosure, I worked on her campaign. I was a co-chair in Florida of Republicans for Harris, and I have a video at our site, leavingmaga.org, of a vignette testimonial that I gave at the DNC night one. People can watch
Love
that.
that.
So I actually spoke via video at the DNC in support of the Harris Waltz ticket. But I think mis and disinformation, at least as much as any other reason, and I believe perhaps most of all, was the reason why we lost in November. I think there were other reasons as well, but mis and disinformation, if not at the very top of the list, is amongst the top, near the top of the list.
No, absolutely. And I think that is probably a conversation that could go for an entire other show about disinformation because that's part of where my empathy for MAGA voters comes in is because I'm like, well, that's the information that they've been exposed to. That's the silo that they're in. And once somebody is in that kind of silo, and they know how to reach us psychologically. It's like a psyops operation, basically. And so it's a tough uphill battle, but I'm glad that you're in it. And I 1,000% support it and hope everybody that's watching goes and finds leavingmaga.org. And you have two PDFs on there that people can access. Can you tell us about those?
Yes, sure. The first is Reaching Out, which is the guide for friends and family, and it's got multiple steps. It's got do's and don'ts. We felt like the don'ts were just as important as the do's. And there's also an ebook which is entitled My MAGA Odyssey. These are both free. There's no strings attached. There's no it's free content. We keep it open source because we want the public to be able to consume and read this, because we believe that they're going to learn an awful lot from it, and that's why we put it together. So please get the guide, please get the book at leavingmaga.org. Leaving MAGA for all of us. We emancipated ourselves from conformity, and we reclaimed our individuality when we left.
Absolutely love it. So great having you on. Thank you,
Thank you.
Rich.
Thank you, Ma. I appreciate it.
Thanks. All right, guys. You have some work to do. I need you to, regardless of whether you have MAGA friends and family anymore, you might know people that have MAGA friends and family. But the fact of the matter is, Trump won because he was able to get people off the couch who weren't necessarily people who were going to vote. He was able to inspire those people through disinformation, through promising things that he was definitely never going to actually deliver. And he got them to the polls. And now that it's total chaos, like Rich said, there's an opening. There's a big opening. This is like there's a shuttle landing and you've got like a window. We have a window of opportunity right now where we can reach these folks and start to build a coalition. And so when you hear these stories and you see them online, resist the urge to hop into the comments and be like, well, now it's happening to you. You can't. Nah, we don't have time for that anymore. We only have time for saving the country. Get in. We're saving the, because it's just too crazy. I can't have every weekend be about Trump. And I really just had wanted people to vote and for Kamala Harris, and we wouldn't be in this situation, but we are. And so we now have so much homework to do. Thank you for joining me for another punching up and at our new time, which is hard for me to get used to, but I hope you guys are getting used to it. Thank you for your, you know, interacting with our community. It's incredibly helpful, and it makes me feel good that we're actually doing something to make a difference. So make sure you're following all of the shows on Substack. We've got lives now. We're doing lives all the time. So turn your notifications on and join us on lives as well. So that's it. I'll see you guys next week.